Hello and welcome to this transmitter programming tutorial for the Blade 230S. Today, I'll be programming with this DX6E transmitter, but these programming instructions are applicable for all Spektrum DX-G2 radios. Let's get started by selecting a new model. Click the scroll wheel and scroll down to System Setup. Click on System Setup and you'll see we get a warning screen letting us know that by proceeding into the next menu, it'll shut off our RF deck, meaning there'll be no more signal being sent out from our transmitter. Click on Yes, and this takes us to the System Setup menu. Now we'll scroll down to where it says Model Select and click. Now we'll scroll down to the very bottom of this page to Add New Model and click on Add New Model, and then Create. And this will give us a completely blank brand new model. Now scroll down to Model Type and then select the picture of the helicopter there, and we'll click on the picture of the helicopter. Data will be reset, click Yes. Great, now let's give the model a name. Scroll down to Model Name, and starting with the first character, I'll name this one 230S. Now that we have the model named, we can push the back button. Now scroll down to Channel Assign, click on Channel Assign, and now we'll scroll down to where it says Gear 5D, and we'll click on the D, and scroll to the left until we get to F mode, and then click on F mode. Now we have that set, push the back button. Now scroll down to F mode Setup. Click on F mode Setup. And for switch 1, we want it to be switch B, which it already is. But for the hold switch, we need to set that to switch H. So scroll down to where it says Inhibit next to hold switch. Click, and scroll to the right until we get to the H switch. And click on switch H. Now with these set, we can push the back button twice. Now we're back to the home screen. Click on the scroll wheel to take us back to the function list. And now let's set up our dual rates. Click on where it says DR and Expo to take us to the dual rates and Expo column. And starting with the aileron channel, since that's the one that's already selected, scroll down to where it says switch on to select a dual rate switch. I'll be using the C switch for my dual rates, but any switch can be used. The 0 position of the C switch will be our high rates, so we'll leave those at 100%. However, we need to add an expo of 25%. So scroll up to the zeros in the expo column, click, and scroll right until we get to 25%. And then click to lock them in. Now we'll flip the C switch down to the 0 position, our low rate position, and we'll bring those 100s down to 75. So click on the 100s in the dual rate column and scroll left, and bring them all the way down to 75 and click to lock them in. And then just like before, we'll add an expo of 25%. So scroll down to the zeros in the expo column and click, and scroll to the right to bring them up to 25% and click to lock it in. Now we can see our dual rates are working on the C switch. We have our 100% high rates with 25% expo, and our 75% low rates with 25% expo. Now we'll do the same thing for the elevator and rudder channels. You can use different switches for your different rates, but I'm going to keep all of mine on the same switch, the C switch. So I'll scroll up to where it says aileron and click, scroll right to get to elevator, click, and just like before, I'll go down to switch on, click and scroll right until I get to switch C. Click on switch C. C switch in the 0 position is my high rates, so I'll leave those at 100% and add the expo of 25%. Flip down to the low rate position. Now I'll bring those dual rates down to 75 and add an expo of 25. I'll verify it's working. High rates, low rates, and they are. Now finally, I'll quickly do the same for the rudder channel. And we can see that's working as it should as well. Now we have our dual rates and exponential set. Let's push the back button and now go down to throttle curve. Click on throttle curve. Our B switch is programmed to control our throttle curve. With the B switch in the 0 position, that's the N or normal position. That throttle curve per the manual should be set to 0.10, 0.265, 0.365, 0.465, and 0.565. We'll scroll down to the N and click on the N. And now we'll scroll down to the 2 column where it says 25%. Click and scroll to the right to bump that up to 65. And click to lock it in. And we'll do the same thing for columns 3, 4, and 5. We'll bump them all up to 65. Now that we have those set, we'll flip the B switch to the 1 position. And now we'll scroll over to the number 1 and click. So starting with position 2, I'll click on the 25% and scroll right until I get to 80%. I'll click to lock it in, and then I'll do the same for the other 3 positions. Position 1 should also be set to 80. Now that we have position 1 set, flip to position 2, and all of these will need to be set to 100. So we'll scroll to the 2 and click on the 2. And now we'll scroll over and we'll change all of those percentages to 100%. Now that our throttle curve is set up, push the back button and now scroll down to pitch curve. We need to adjust pitch points 1 and 2. So we'll click on the N and then scroll down to the 0% there, in the first pitch point. Click, and we'll bump that up to 30%. Click to lock it in at 30%, and now we'll scroll down to the number 2 pitch point. Click on that 25%, and we'll bump this one up to 40%. And click to lock it in. Endpoints 3, 4, and 5 are all set to where they need to be, as well are positions 1 and 2. However, we do need to set the hold position. So we'll scroll over to the H for the hold position. Click on the H, and now we'll scroll down to that first pitch point, click on that 0%, and we'll bump this one up to 25%. Click to lock in the 25%. Now we'll scroll down to position 2, click on that 25%, and we'll bump that up to 37%. Click on 37% to lock it in. And then position 3, 4, and 5 are all set to where they need to be at 50, 75, and 100. Now our pitch curve is set. Push the back button. And now let's scroll down to mixing. Click on Mixing, and scroll down to Mix 1 and click. Scroll down to Normal and click on Normal. And starting with the first INH on the top left there, scroll down and click on it, and scroll to the right to change it to the I button. Click on I, and then scroll over to the other INH, click, and scroll until we get to the word Gear, G-E-R, and click. Now for the rates, we'll leave the first 0% as it is. However, click on the second and scroll left until we get to negative 125. Click on negative 125, and then click on the 0 in the offset column, and scroll to the right to bring that up to 100. And click to lock it in. Now that we've got the mix set, push the back button until we're back to the main screen. And now this DX6E is programmed and ready to fly the Blade 230S. Thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial. Hello and welcome to this transmitter programming tutorial for the Blade 230S. Today, I'll be programming with this NX6 transmitter, but these programming instructions are applicable for all Spektrum NX radios. Let's get started by selecting a brand new model. Click the scroll wheel and scroll all the way down to System Setup. Click on System Setup and you'll see a warning screen letting us know that by proceeding into the next menu, it'll shut off our RF deck, meaning there'll be no signal being sent out from our transmitter. Click Yes, and here we're at the System Setup list. Scroll down to Model Select and click, and then we'll scroll down towards the bottom of this page and select Add New Model. Click on Add New Model. Here we can click on the picture of the airplane and change it to the helicopter. There we go. Now click on Create. And this will give us a brand new, completely blank model already set up for a generic helicopter. Now let's give it a name. Scroll down to Model Name. And starting with the first character, I'll name this one 230S. With the model named, I'll push the back button twice. Now we're back to the System Setup list again. Now scroll down to F-Mode Setup. Click on F-Mode Setup, and for switch 1, switch B is exactly what we want, so we'll leave that as it is. But the hold switch should be switch H. So scroll down to where it says Hold Switch Inhibit and click, and scroll to the right until we get to switch H. Now that that's set, push the back button and scroll down to Channel Assign. And now we'll scroll down to the D on the 5th channel gear. Click on the D and scroll left to change it to F mode. Click on F mode. And now we can push the back button twice to take us back to the home screen. Now we'll click the scroll wheel, back to the function list. And now let's set up our dual rates in Expo. Click on where it says DR and Expo. And we'll start with the aileron channel since that's what's already selected. Scroll down to where it says switch on to select your dual rate switch. I'll be using the C switch for my dual rates. So I'll scroll to the right until I get to switch C and then click. Switch C is a 3-position switch, and per the manual, for the 0 position and the 1 position, those will both be high rates. So we'll leave them at 100%. However, we need to add an expo of 25% to both of them. So we'll scroll up with the C switch in the 0 position, I'll scroll up to the expo, click on the zeros, and scroll right until I get to 25%. And then click to lock it in. Now I'll flip the C switch down to the 1 position, and I'll do the exact same thing. And click to lock it in. And now I'll flip the C switch down to the 2 position, and this will be our low rates. So we'll scroll up to the 100% on the rate column, click, and scroll left until we bring them down to 75%. And click to lock them in. Now I'll add an expo of 25%, just like before. Click to lock it in. And now we'll verify the switch is working. Positions 0 and 1 are both high rates and will be the same. Then flipping down to position 2, we see our low rates of 75% with 25% expo. Now we're going to do the same thing for the elevator and rudder channels. We'll scroll up to where it says aileron and click. Scroll right to elevator and click. And then scroll down to where it says switch on and select your switch. You can use different switches for your different channels, but I'm going to keep them all on the same switch, the C switch. So just like before, C switch in the 0 and 1 position are high rates, but they both need a 25% expo. So I'll click on the 0 in the expo column and bump it up to 25%. Lock it in. I'll flip down to the 1 position and do the same thing. And finally, I'll flip down to the 2 position, our low rate position, and I'll set the rates to 75% with an expo of 25. Now I'm going to quickly do the exact same thing for the rudder channel. We can verify that's working as it should. And with our dual rate set, now we can push the back button. And now let's go down to throttle curve. Click on throttle curve. And the throttle curve is controlled by the B switch, our flight mode switch. So with the B switch in the 0 position, that's the normal mode position. The first position will remain at 0%. However, positions 2 through 5 all need to be set to 65. So I'll start by clicking on the N for normal mode. And now we can scroll down to the 2 position where it says 25%, click, and we'll bump that up to 65%. And click to lock it in. And now we'll do the same for positions 3, 4, and 5. Now the N position is set. Now we just need to move on to positions 1 and 2. So I'll flip the flight mode switch to position 1, and then I'll click on the 1 there in the middle. Now, positions 1 through 5 all need to be set to 80%. So we'll scroll down to that first 0%, click, and scroll to the right until we get up to 80%. And click to lock it in. And now do the same with the others. Now we have position 1 set. Flip the flight mode switch to position 2. And now we'll click on the 2 up there. Now all of these positions should be set to 100%. So starting with position 1, click, and scroll down all the way up to 100. And we'll do the same for all the other channels. Now our throttle curve is set. Push the back button, and now scroll down to pitch curve. Click on pitch curve. And with the flight mode switch in the 0 position, the normal position, click on the N, and now scroll down to position 1, click on the 0%, and bump that up to 30%. And click to lock it in. Now go down to the 2 position, the 25, and we'll bump that up to 40%. Positions 3, 4, and 5 are already set to where they need to be, along with positions 1 and 2. They are already set from the factory where we need them, so we don't need to do any more adjustment to the pitch curve. And flight modes position 1 and 2 are already set to where they need to be from the factory, so we don't need to adjust those. However, we do need to adjust the hold position. Scroll over to the H for throttle hold, and position 1, click on the 0%, bump that up to 25%, and position 2, bump that 25% up to 37%, and then position 3, 4, and 5 are all fine just as they are from the factory. So now we can push the back button, and now finally let's scroll down to mixing. Click on Mixing, and now scroll down to Mix 1. You'll say INH, INH. Click on Mix 1, and now scroll down to Normal, and click on Normal. And now we'll scroll down to the first INH up there. Click on that INH, and scroll to the right until we get to I. There's I. We'll click on I to lock it in. And then we'll scroll over to the other INH there on the right. And we'll scroll to the right until we get to Gear, G-E-R. Click on G-E-R to lock it in. The rate on the left side will remain at 0%. However, we'll scroll down to the second rate there on the right side. Click on that 0%. And we'll scroll left to bring this all the way down to negative 125%. Click to lock it in. Now scroll down to Offset and click on Offset. And we'll scroll right to bring this one up to 100%. And click to lock it in. We'll leave curve at 0, and we'll scroll down to Switch, click on Switch, and we'll scroll to the right until we get to Switch I. Click on Switch I. Now our mix is set. There's just one more adjustment we need to make. Scroll down to the 0 that's highlighted in black there at the bottom. Click on that 0. And now scroll over to the 1 box. Click on that. So now that the 1 box is highlighted in black. This is what your mix will look like now. And when we depress the I switch, you'll see the mix is active. Now that the mix is set up, we can push the back button until we return to the home screen. And now this NX6 is programmed and ready to fly the Blade 230S. Thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial. Hello and welcome to this transmitter programming tutorial for the Blade 230S. Today I'll be programming with this IX14 transmitter, but these programming instructions are applicable for all Spektrum IX radios. Let's get started by selecting a new model. Click the little orange marker at the top left-hand side of the screen, and then click Proceed. Now click the 3 orange dots at the top right-hand side of the screen, and then select Add New Model. Default, Helicopter, Create. Now we'll click on the helicopter column, and there it is, Heli. Click on Heli. And now click on Heli again, and we can give it a name. First, we'll delete what's in there, and I'll name this one 230S. Now that we have our model named, we can push the back button twice. And now we're back to the main menu. Click on Model Setup, and then click on Flight Mode Setup. Proceed. And we'll be using switch B, which is already selected. For switch 2, we'll leave that as inhibit. And for hold switch, we need to set that to switch H. So click on the inhibit on the hold switch column. And now we'll scroll down to switch H and select switch H. Now we can push the back button. And now click on Channel Assign. For channel 5 gear, we need to change that from switch D to F mode. So click on where it says switch D, and we'll scroll up to find flight mode. Click on flight mode. Now we can push the back button again, and now click on model adjust. Let's set up our dual rates. Click on where it says dual rates in Expo. And starting with the aileron channel, click on where it says switch on to select a dual rate switch. Any switch can be used, but I'll be using the C switch. So select switch C. The C switch is a 3-position switch. Positions 0 and 1 will be our high rates, while position 2 will be our low rates. So with it in position 0, we'll leave those rates at 100%. We need to add an expo of 25. So we'll click on the zeros in the expo column, and we'll drag those up to 25%. And click OK to lock it in. Flip the C switch down to the 1 position, and do the same thing again. We'll click on the expo, the zeros, and drag them up to 25. And OK to lock them in. And now we'll flip the C switch down to the 2 position for our low rates. And now we'll click on the rates, the 100%, and we'll bring those down to 75%. And OK to lock them in. And again, expo of 25%. So we'll click on the zeros in the expo column, and we'll drag those up to 25%. And OK to lock them in. Now we can see that's working as it should. Position 0 and 1 both being the same high rate, and position 2 is our low rate, 75%. Now we'll do the same thing for the elevator and rudder channels. Click on where it says aileron and select elevator. Click on switch. You can use a different switch if you'd like, but I'm going to keep all my dual rates on the same switch, switch C. C switch in the 0 position, high rates. We'll add an expo of 25%. OK to lock them in. And C switch in the 1 position, same thing. Add an expo of 25%. And OK to lock them in. Now we'll flip the C switch down to the 2 position for our low rate position for the elevator channel. We'll click on the rates, the 100%, and we'll now bring those down to 75% for our low rates. OK to lock them in. And now add an expo of 25. We'll test to see that it's working. 0 and 1 are our high rates, and dropping down to 2, we get our low rates. Now I'll quickly do the same thing for the rudder channel. Select rudder, switch, C switch, expo 25%, OK. Flip to 1, again add expo of 25, OK to lock it in, and flip down to the 2 position for our low rates. Bring those down to 75, and 25% expo. Now our dual rates are set. Push the back button. Now let's set up our throttle curve. Click on throttle curve. And starting with the in or normal position, we'll scroll down on this page. The first position will remain at 0%. Click on the 25% in the number 2 column, and we'll bump that up to 65%. And OK to lock it in. And we'll do the same for 3, 4, and 5. Click on the 50% in the 3 column. We'll bump it up to 65. OK to lock it in. And again for 4. We'll bring that down to 65. And number 5, we'll bring 100 down to 65. And OK to lock it in. Now flip your flight mode switch, the B switch, to position 1. And now let's set stunt mode 1. We'll click on the 0 in the first position, and we'll bring this up to 80%. 80%, and then OK to lock it in. And position 2, 3, 4, and 5, we'll do the exact same thing. We'll set them all to 80%. OK to lock it in. Position 3, 80%. OK. And 4. OK. And then position 5 will bring down to 80%. And OK to lock it in. Now stunt mode 1 is set. Flip the B switch to position 2 for stunt mode 2. And these should all be set to 100% across the board. So we'll start with that first 0%, and we'll drag it all the way up to 100, and then OK to lock it in. And we'll do the same for the others. And there we have our stunt mode 2, stunt mode 1, and our normal mode. And now push the back button and go to pitch curve. Click on pitch curve. And starting with in for normal flight mode, we'll adjust the first position to 30. Click on the 0%, drag it up to 30%. For position 2, we'll drag that up to 40%. So click on the 25 and drag it up to 40. OK to lock it in. And positions 3, 4, and 5 will stay just as they are. The same goes for flight modes 1 and 2. Those pitch curves are fine just as they are from the factory. However, we do need to adjust our throttle hold. Flip your throttle hold on, and now we'll scroll down, and we can adjust our throttle hold numbers. For position 1, that should be set to 25%. So we'll click on that 0 in the 1 column and drag it up to 25%. OK to lock it in. Now for position 2, we'll set that to 37%. Drag it up to 37, and then OK to lock it in. And positions 3, 4, and 5 can remain as they are. Now we can push the back button. And now click on Mixing. Click on where it says PMix 1. Click on Normal. Now click on the INH on the left, and we'll set that to I. Now click the INH on the right, and we'll set that to Gear, G-E-R. Now for the rates, the rate on the left will remain at 0. However, click on the rates on the right, And we'll drop that down to negative 125%. And OK to lock it in. Now click on the offset, 0%. And we're going to drag that up to 100%. And OK to lock it in. And now that our mix is set up and working, we can push the back button back to the main screen. And now this iX14 is programmed and ready to fly the Blade 230S. Thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial.